Yo, what's good, y'all? Kanji Bono back up in here to finish part 2 of my Creating the Perfect NBA Player series. If you hadn't watched the previous video, in this series, I'm essentially creating the ultimate perfect NBA player using all-time NBA players instead of just current NBA players to create the greatest monster the league would have hypothetically seen. In this series, I use 13 aspects of the game and explain in full detail why I selected the specific player as my representative to go along with my perfect player. And today, I'm going over the last 7 attributes to finally complete the series once and for all. If you liked the video, try checking out some of my other work, but with all that being said, let's get into our 7th attribute for our perfect player.
Look for the win. DeRozan to win it. DeMar DeRozan delivers.
Now, for post defense, a lot of the best candidates came from the 60s, which makes this portion tricky because, as most of y'all know, the 60s didn't really record blocks or any rim protection stats at the time. So with players like Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, and Nate Thurman, I can acknowledge them, but I don't have any coherent justification in putting them in the race, aside from limited video footage and interviews. So with that in mind, I ultimately picked 1889, 90, Hakeem Olajuwon as my choice for rim protection. Now with rim protection, this is a tight battle because you got guys like Mark Eaton, Dikembe Mutombo, Manu Bol, but especially Mark Eaton, who, because he actually led the league in blocks 4 times and also has the record for the most blocks in a season. But what separates Hakeem from me compared to the rest of these other men is that Hakeem to me seemed to have more of a defensive IQ and ideology when it came to blocking shots compared to guys like Manu or Eaton, who most of their blocks came from just their great length. Though sure, yeah, Hakeem was definitely a giant on his own accord with his 7-foot stature, but Hakeem had an elegance to his shot blocking ability, more of a calculative strategy of when to block and how to utilize the most of his wingspan. Because remember, we are using a 6'9" frame for our perfect player, so we definitely need someone with more of a defensive IQ for our blocking ability and not much physical traits. So that being said, let's get on to our next attributes. Alright, transitioning from the post, we enter into perimeter defense. Now with this attribute, I'd say it was probably the hardest to distinguish the candidates because perimeter defense is perimeter defense, you know? You get steals, you close on 3-point shooters, and you usually guard the best guard or wing. And I could say the exact same things for all the candidates in this attribute. Not gonna lie, I probably have to do more research on this because to me, someone who has been considered to be a good perimeter defender in real life, not to brag of course, the art of perimeter defense has always been straightforward. Play hard, stay low, and you'll be good. So yeah, definitely have to go and research not only to make my content better, but also to apply more skills to my arsenal in real life. But when it comes to perimeter defense though, if I had to make a selection for my perfect NBA player, it'd have to be Gary Payton. I choose Gary Payton because he is a hard-nosed defender that is not afraid of getting in and dirty. Pause. But what I mean is that compared to everyone else, Gary Payton seems to be the most intense and proud of his perimeter defense, which is a trait I love for my perfect NBA player. And also, like y'all saw in the introduction slide, most people have Gary Payton as the consensus best perimeter defender. So for just that and the reasons I explained earlier, I got Gary Payton perimeter defense for my perfect NBA player's attribute. Now let's transition to the next attribute. While rim protection stats unfortunately couldn't be traced back then, you know what other stat can be traced back to the 60s? Well, like the title says, it's rebounding. So with rebounding, there's really only 2 competitors I want for this spot, but for this video, I'm gonna go with the C's legend himself, Bill Russell. Now with this selection, it could really be interchangeable between Bill and Wilt, not gonna lie. The only reason why I have Bill slightly ahead though is because yeah, Wilt statistically had better rebounding numbers, but in my opinion, Bill's rebounds were more organic and natural and not as fabricated and stat-padded as Wilt's, because who else is rebounding on those Warriors teams, not gonna lie. But yeah, like Stockton, Bill and Wilt just ran a monopoly when it came to rebounding. When it comes to the most rebounds in a season, Bill and Wilt alone had 18. You heard me right. 18 of the top selections. And when it came to rebounds per game, they also own 18 of those spots. Now, with this selection, you could say I'm kind of contradicting my point that I made in the post defense section, because I do believe Rodman is the more skilled and higher IQ'd rebounder than both Bill and Wilt. But my thing is, like I said in my Stockton selection, when you look at the metrics and see how astronomically far ahead Bill and Wilt are against the rest of the competition, the production and consistency of how they got their rebounds overlaps the gap Rodman has on the skill level. Maybe in the future I might redo this idea if I change my ideology between production and skill, because sure, the 60s were definitely inflated when it came to rebounding because the pace of the game back then, but in my opinion, that argument doesn't really hold as much weight when the two top rebounders own the top 18 seasons for a singular category. The production maxes out, in my opinion. But with that being said, let's get on to our next attribute. Now, with this attribute, this is probably going to be my most controversial selection in this video. Even the John Stockton take, in my opinion, is slightly less controversial than this. But once you hear my reasoning for this player selection, you may still disagree with me, but it'll make a lot more sense though. But without further ado, my post-game attribute for my perfect NBA player would be Hakeem Olajuwon. Now with Hakeem, sure, he might not be the most volume post scorer or get you the most shots, but what Hakeem has that in my opinion gives him the leverage to be part of my perfect NBA player is his technicality and his footwork. The way Hakeem knew how to use and abuse opponents without just using pure force was incredible. Like sure, other post scorers like Shaq and Kareem had excellent footwork, but Hakeem really made a name for himself because of his craftiness and unique ability to outsmart opponents in the paint, rather than just dominate them. Like y'all saw in the introduction slide, Hakeem was so revolutionary with his footwork that other NBA legends such as Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, and famously LeBron, who he helped join that 2012 offseason to make him have a more refined footwork and become a force to be reckoned with in the 2013 season. It doesn't even stop there. Even current players like Alfred Sengun, a rising center for the Houston Rockets, have stated admiration and liking to train with Hakeem, and to have a post-game so transcendent that younger generations, even 2 decades after your retirement, people still want lessons from you. In my opinion, that what makes Hakeem the most honorable to take this spot. Let's get into our next attribute. With off-ball offense, this should be the opposite of the last attribute, where it should be pretty unanimous and well known who I'm taking at this spot. Without further prolonging this introduction, my choice for my perfect NBA player's off-ball attribute is none other than Stephen Curry. Now with Curry, most of his great off-ball mechanisms are deep-rooted from the being in that Warriors system. But even then, Curry's gravity is to such a high magnitude that I find it hard for his off-ball antics to be contained in any other system. As you saw from the introduction slide, even all-star caliber players are afraid to try and defend Steph, because not only can he pull up from anywhere, not only does he have crisp handles that could mess you up, but he got that stamina to outrun you and get you tangled up in multiple screens, which eventually will leave him open. Swear, Curry could have been a soccer or cross-country player the way he just runs constantly. If I had to defend Curry in a 5v5 setup, I'd be gassed in the first couple of possessions. But yeah, that's the reason why Curry's a unanimous MVP. Now let's get into our second to last next attribute. Now on the other side of the off-ball spectrum, we get into off-ball defense. And with off-ball defense, unlike offense, there's a lot of candidates that can compete for this spot. For off-ball defense, you'd have to have top-notch rotations, be versatile at all positions, be quick on your feet, be a vocal communicator, and obviously have great defensive IQ. And when I look at the candidates for this spot, in my opinion, no one in NBA history represents these traits better than Kevin Maurice Garnett of the Boston Celtics in 08. With Garnett, there's so much great things to talk about regarding his defense, especially his off-ball defense. First off, he's a solid shot blocker around the rim and is able to get into position to block other players. Second off, he's also great at the perimeter with his intensity to lock down and trap certain players. Third off, his versatility being able to guard all different positions of different shapes and sizes. Fourth off, and most importantly, is the tenacity and energy he brings into a team when he walks into that court. His strict communication makes sure everybody is on par to play defense and know what position they should be at when they are at the court. It definitely showed in those Celtics seasons where he essentially was the full defensive anchor for that team and led them to one of the best defenses in recent NBA history. So with all those points, KG is my perfect candidate for my perfect NBA player's off-ball attributes. Now let's finally get into the last attribute of this video. Wanted to end the video on a more fun note, so let's get into dunk package. Now to be honest, if you remember from the rule slide, I'm only taking players that have played in the NBA, so if it hadn't been for that rule I set upon myself, I most likely would have had Jordan Killigan, if I'm pronouncing that right, on for this portion. When you talk about a dunk package, this guy got it. Like bro be pulling off dunks that shouldn't even be possible to mankind. So shout out to Killigan, man. I would love to put his dunk package for my perfect player, but I feel as though putting non-NBA players for this concept will mess up the consistency of the video. Anyways, with that being said, Killigan out the picture. My selection for who I want a dunk package for my perfect NBA player is Vince Carter. Now to be honest, the competition was pretty steep for this category. One competitor in mind is Aaron Gordon. Now in my opinion, I think Aaron Gordon has more creative dunks as a whole than Carter. But what sets Carter apart from the rest is his in-game dunk abilities combined with his athleticism and impact he has with it. When you look at the screen and see Carter's dunk package, you see Carter was an absolute clinic when it came to in-game dunks and undoubtedly had the greatest in-game dunk of all time. So with the frequency and influence Carter had produced, in my opinion, he is gladly worthy to be part of my perfect NBA player's dunk package. And there we go. Those are all my 13 player attributes I would use for my perfect NBA player. Like I said in the first part, I would love to see what y'all would put for these attributes. Do you think I overrated or underrated a player's skill set? Do you think I forgot anyone? Do you think the structure of how I selected the 13 attributes was alright? I would genuinely love to know and have a conversation with y'all in the comment section below. But with all that being said, it's your man's Kanji Bonan, and remember to always strive for greatness. And